Hello, my name is Queen Bisnar. My edX username is null hypothesis underscore, and my GitHub username is Quien BSNR. Today's date is March 4th, 2026. The title of this presentation is Phishing and Credential Theft Leading to Account Takeover, which occurred in 2025. I chose this topic because it demonstrates how seemingly ordinary phishing tactics can escalate into large scale financial and privacy consequences. It directly relates to the course on securing accounts and on preserving privacy. Now, this presentation is based on an article written by Edward Kovacs and published by SecurityWeek on December 23, 2025. Before examining the technical details, it is important to establish the facts of the incident first. According to the article, the United States Department of Justice announced the seizure of a domain and password database used in a large cybercrime operation. At first glance, the announcement appears straightforward. However, the underlying operation reveals a more structured scheme. The incident involved a large scale bank account takeover scheme. Cybercriminals used malicious search advertisements to lure victims to fake banking websites. These fake sites impersonated legitimate banks and collected usernames and passwords entered by victims. The stolen credentials were stored in a backend management panel hosted on web3adspanel.org, which authorities later seized. This incident centers on phishing, social engineering, and credential theft. But more importantly, it reflects a breakdown in account security and user trust. What's particularly notable here is how predictable the workflow actually was. The attack followed a familiar pattern. Attackers posted malicious search advertisements on search engines such as Google and Bing. These ads were crafted to look legitimate, drawing users in without raising suspicion. And then the users clicked the ads and were redirected to fake banking websites. Once the users are on these sites, victims assumed they were interacting with the real banks. And then victims entered login credentials. At this point, the attackers had successfully captured sensitive information. Then credentials were stored in an attacker controlled database. This centralized management panel made it easy to organize and deploy the stolen information. Lastly, the attackers then accessed real bank accounts using the stolen credentials. This attack combined technical infrastructure with psychological manipulation, demonstrating how human behavior is often the weakest link in cybersecurity. Understanding the attack workflow makes the impact more tangible. The Federal Bureau of Investigation identified nearly 20 victims, including two companies. Even a small number of targeted accounts can represent substantial risk. The attackers attempted to steal approximately $28 million, with confirmed losses estimated at around $14.6 million. More broadly, the article also notes that account takeover schemes cost over $262 million in losses since January 2025. It highlights that this is a systematic, ongoing issue, not a one off event. Clearly, phishing attacks combined with weak controls can have massive consequences. The more revealing question, however, is how the attackers were able to scale the operation so effectively. The attackers relied on the following technologies and methods: phishing websites, mimicking legitimate banks, malicious search engine advertisements, back-end credential management panel, social engineering, which exploited user trust, and a combination of technical and psychological tactics. Technology enabled the attack, but vulnerabilities in user behavior and defensive controls allowed it to succeed. Users trusted search results and did not verify URLs. Simple verification could have prevented many compromises. Malicious ads went undetected by platforms, which shows a gap in platform level security controls. Thirdly, victims likely used weak or reused passwords or lacked strong authentication protections. And the absence of phishing resistant multi factor authentication made account compromises easier. Now, recognizing these gaps makes the corrective measures more concrete. Users must carefully verify URLs, avoid clicking advertisements when accessing banks or financial services, use strong, unique passwords, enable multi factor authentication, and then monitor account activity regularly. For organizations, they must also enforce phishing resistant authentication methods, monitor login activity for anomalies, conduct user security awareness training, deploy fraud detection systems. And lastly, for the platforms, they must improve advertisement vetting and detect and block scams proactively. Taken together, this incident illustrates how relatively familiar tactics like phishing and credential theft can escalate into large scale financial and privacy harm when layered defenses are absent. At its core, this was not a highly sophisticated exploit. It was a strategic combination of psychological manipulation and authentication weakness. That combination proved sufficient to generate millions of dollars in losses. From the perspective of the CS50 Introduction to Cybersecurity course, this case brings core concepts into practice: securing accounts, securing data, securing systems and software, and preserving privacy under real world conditions. Preventing account takeover attacks requires coordinated responsibility across users, organizations, and platforms. When authentication is strengthened, phishing resistance improves and user awareness increases. The attack surface narrows substantially. Phishing resistance and strong authentication are also critical. Understanding these patterns allows us to move from theory to defense. So these are the sources for this presentation, and thank you for your attention.